Have you ever had a guy treat you like a queen 1 minute, then act like he doesn't even know you the next? You replay every word, every message, trying to figure out what just happened. But what if I told you he was never confused? He was testing you. Most women miss this completely. They take it personally, they chase, they over-explain, and just like that, they fail the test and he walks away. But here's the truth. No one talks about before a man lets himself fall in love. He needs to know what kind of woman he's dealing with. Not the woman you pretend to be on a good day, but the real you under pressure. He needs to know, can you handle his emotional walls without trying to break them down? Will you respect yourself when he pushes your boundaries? Are you secure enough not to react when he pulls away? Because here's the secret. Men don't fall in love based on your beauty, your body, or your charm. They fall in love with how you respond when you're being tested, even when you don't realize it. In this video, I'm revealing the hidden patterns of how men test women and how to pass everyone without losing your power. If you want to stop guessing what he's thinking and start understanding how real attraction builds, keep watching, because once you understand this, you'll never chase, doubt, or question your worth again. Let's get into it. A lot of women take it personally when a man starts acting distant, inconsistent, or even confusing, especially in the early stages. But what's really happening isn't always rejection. It's evaluation. See, most men don't consciously say, let me test her, but on a subconscious level, that's exactly what they're doing. Before a man gives his heart away, he has to feel safe. And safety for him doesn't just mean someone kind or beautiful. It means someone who can navigate his emotional landscape without trying to control it. Someone who isn't easily shaken by his mood, shifts his silences or his fears. That's why the testing begins. It's his way of seeing how you show up when things aren't perfect. How do you react when he cancels plans? What do you do when he suddenly stops texting like he used to? Do you spiral chase, overcompensate, or do you stay calm, grounded, and let him come back to you? For men, emotional security is earned through observation, not just words. He watches your reactions, because he wants to know, can you handle the parts of him that he doesn't show the world, the vulnerable, uncertain, flawed parts? If your self-esteem crumbles when he pulls away, it sends a signal that your stability is conditional, and that's a red flag for him, even if he can't explain why. And then there's this deeper truth. A man will test you because love feels risky. The more he likes you, the more his fears get activated. He wants to trust you with his heart, but he's watching to see if you'll stay feminine, powerful, and secure even when you don't get your way. If you pass that test, not by performing, but by being authentic and emotionally mature, he starts to feel something rare, safe, inspired, seen. That's the foundation of deep attraction. And it's why understanding this testing phase is one of the most powerful tools a woman can have in dating. Because once you see it for what it is, you stop reacting and start responding. And that shift, that's what makes you unforgettable. One of the most confusing and emotionally triggering tests a man will put a woman through is the emotional distance test. It often catches you completely off guard, especially if everything was going great. He was calling, texting, showing up, and then suddenly it's like a switch flips. His messages slow down. His attention fades. He seems less available. And you're left wondering, did I do something wrong? Here's the truth. In most cases, you didn't. What you're experiencing is not a mistake, it's a pattern. And this pattern has a purpose. The emotional distance test is how a man measures your emotional independence. See, Early on, many men will intentionally or subconsciously create space to see how you respond to uncertainty. He wants to know, are you whole on your own, or do you emotionally collapse the moment he takes a step back? He's looking to see if your happiness is dependent on his presence, because if it is, and pressure kills attraction. When a man pulls away, most women go into panic mode. They start texting more, asking questions, trying to fix the vibe. But here's what that teaches him. She needs me to regulate her emotions. She can't hold her own when I'm not constantly reassuring her. And when a man feels like he has to be your emotional oxygen just to keep peace, he starts pulling away even more. But when you do the opposite, when you match his energy with grace and self-respect, he notices. When you don't chase, beg, or demand, but instead remain calm, confident, and unbothered, he starts to realize this woman doesn't need me. She chooses me. That's magnetic. Passing the emotional distance test doesn't mean you pretend not to care. It means you let the space be what it is, without spiraling into fear or self-doubt. You stay in your power. You stay focused on your life. You don't initiate a confrontation because there's nothing to fight about. You let his absence reveal his intentions. And here's what usually happens next. If he was genuinely interested and just testing, he'll come back often stronger. You'll see that you didn't flinch, that you're secure, that you respect yourself enough not to chase someone who's pulling away, and that makes him respect you more. If he doesn't come back, that's not a loss, that's clarity. That means he was never serious, and your reaction helped him reveal his true colors sooner, not later. Either way, you win because you didn't lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who was unsure. The emotional distance test is not something to fear, it's something to master. And once you do, you become the kind of woman who commands respect without demanding it and who attracts love without chasing it. That's power. One of the most emotionally draining experiences in early dating is dealing with a man who seems hot one moment and ice cold the next. One day he's complimenting you, initiating conversations, planning dates. Then out of nowhere, he pulls back. He becomes distant, vague, or just plain unavailable. And the confusion begins. You're left asking, what changed? Did I say something wrong? Why is he acting like he does all of a sudden? But here's what you need to understand. This hot and cold behavior isn't always about losing interest. In many cases, it's part of a psychological pattern. And yes, it's another test. See, when a man turns up the heat, he's trying to create emotional closeness. He enjoys the connection, the attention, the chemistry. But when those feelings start to deepen, when it becomes more real, fear creeps in. Not necessarily fear of you, but fear of vulnerability, fear of losing control, fear of being emotionally exposed. So what does he do? He retreats. He cools down, not because he's cruel, but because he's trying to reassert emotional control over the situation. Think of it like this. He turns the heat up to see how strong the connection is, then turns it off to see how you react when the energy drops. Do you chase hard? Do you blame yourself? Do you overthink and try to fix it? Or do you maintain your emotional rhythm regardless of his shifts? This push-pull game isn't always intentional, but it's revealing. How you handle his inconsistency teaches him more about your emotional intelligence than any deep conversation. If you become reactive, it signals that you're too dependent on his attention for validation. But if you stay grounded, if you mirror his detachment with composure and grace, he starts to respect you on a deeper level. And that's when the game stops feeling like a game. A man will only continue hot and cold behavior with a woman who tolerates it. The moment you stop reacting and start observing, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer the one being pulled around by his moods. You become the one he's trying to figure out. This doesn't mean you settle for inconsistency. It means you don't personalize it. You give space. You step back and you let him feel the contrast between your presence and your absence. Because here's the secret. When a man goes cold and you don't chase, when you don't try to win him back, that's when he realizes he could lose you. And if he values you, that realization brings him back stronger, more consistent, and more intentional. But if he doesn't, he fades. And that's your answer, without you lifting a finger. So remember, hot and cold is not a cue to chase. It's a cue to pause, observe, and let your energy speak louder than words. At some point, especially when a man starts to feel more connected to you, he will test your boundaries. This is one of the most critical phases in the early stages of dating, and many women don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. He might not do it in obvious or disrespectful ways, but you'll start noticing subtle shifts in how he communicates, behaves, or treats your time and energy. Maybe he cancels plans last minute to see how you react. Maybe he brings up a topic that crosses a line, like commenting on other women or teasing you about something personal. Maybe he pushes for something physical before you're ready, or jokes about commitment just to gauge your reaction. This is called the boundary pushing phase. And it's a test not just of what you'll allow, but of who you are when you're uncomfortable. What a man is really looking for during this phase isn't necessarily permission. He's looking for alignment. He wants to know, do you know your own limit? Do you enforce them calmly and confidently? Will you still respect yourself even if it means he might walk away? Because here's the truth. If you don't respect your own boundaries, he won't either. If you let things slide just to keep the peace or avoid losing him, you send a very clear message that your need for connection outweighs your need for self-respect. And once that dynamic is in place, it becomes very hard to reverse. The women who pass this phase don't do it by arguing, attacking, or over-explaining. They do it by stating their standards with calm clarity. They don't threaten or try to guilt trip. They simply draw the line and stick to it. No drama, no begging, no emotional outburst, just presence, confidence, and a deep sense of self-worth. When a man sees that you can say no without fear, that you can disagree without losing your cool, and that you're willing to walk away rather than compromise your values, that's when he truly starts to respect you. And respect is the foundation of lasting attraction. Men instinctively test boundaries not to be cruel, but to find emotional safety. A woman who holds her boundaries teaches him that she is strong enough to be trusted and loved deep. But here's the catch. Once you allow a boundary to be crossed without consequence, it's no longer a boundary. It's a green light. And whatever you tolerate once becomes a pattern. He repeats. So the next time you feel that push, whether it's subtle or obvious, use it as an opportunity to show him exactly who you are, not by fighting, but by standing tall in your truth. Because the woman who won't bend just to be chosen is the one who's truly unforgettable. Communication in the early stages of dating can feel like walking a tightrope. One wrong word, one misunderstood text, and suddenly the energy shifts. But what many women don't realize is that how you communicate under pressure, when things feel uncertain or emotionally charged, is exactly what a man is watching. This is what I call the communication challenge. It's not about how charming or witty you are when everything is going well. It's about how you express yourself when something feels off. When he forgets to respond, shows up late, says something that hurts or goes silent. That's when your emotional maturity is tested. And whether he's aware of it or not, that's when he's deciding, is she safe to open up to? Can I trust her with the more vulnerable parts of me? Now, here's where many women get stuck. They either suppress what they're feeling out of fear of seeming needy, or they explode, trying to force understanding through intensity, but neither approach work. Suppression leads to resentment. An emotional outburst pushes men further away. The power lies in assertive, emotionally intelligent communication. When something doesn't sit right with you, and you express it calmly, without blame, without accusations, without trying to control the outcome, that's incredibly attractive, not because you're sugarcoating your feelings, but because you're showing him you can handle tough emotions without making the other person responsible for fixing them. Let's say he pulls away or gives short replies. Instead of sending a dozen "are you okay" texts or pretending you don't care, you might say something simple like, "Hey, I noticed a shift in how we've been talking lately. I value communication and I want to understand where we're at. I'm open to an honest conversation whenever you are." That's powerful. You've addressed the issue directly, but without drama. You've shown self-respect and invited clarity without chasing or emotionally collapse. This kind of communication tells him she's not here to play games and she's not afraid of truth. And guess what? That often shocks a man in a good way, because so many people are either passive-aggressive or emotionally reactive. When a woman can speak directly with calm strength, she stands out. It also helps you protect your own energy instead of sitting in silence, waiting and overthinking. You've taken action without giving your power away. And if he doesn't respond with honesty or effort, that tells you everything you need to know. The communication challenge isn't about saying the perfect thing. It's about saying your truth in a way that honors you, invites real connection, and filters out the ones who aren't ready for it. Because the woman who can communicate with clarity and confidence, she doesn't chase clarity, she creates it. Now that you understand the tests, the emotional distance, the hot and cold behavior, the boundary pushing, the communication challenges, the question becomes, how do you actually respond in a way that keeps your power and earns his respect? This is where most women either overcompensate or shut down completely. But the real answer isn't about being cold or playing hard to get. It's about embodying emotional leadership, not overreacting, not begging for clarity, and not letting his behavior define your value. The first key to passing these tests is emotional self-regulation. When a man pulls back or gives inconsistent energy, your nervous system might go into panic mode. That's normal, but it's also the moment where your response makes all the difference. Breathe, pause, don't react immediately. The woman who passes the test is the woman who knows how to manage her emotional wave before she speaks or acts. Second, use non-reactive confidence. If he goes cold, match his energy, but not in a petty or punishing way. Simply shift your focus inward. Pull your energy back to you. Keep living, laughing, glowing, growing. That communicates more than words ever could. He'll feel the shift, and it won't come from a place of neediness, but from quiet strength. Third, establish and maintain calm boundary. When something crosses a line, you don't need to raise your voice or argue to be heard. You can say, "Hey, I don't feel good about that. I'm looking for someone who respects X, Y, and Z." If that's not where you are, I totally respect it, but I also know what I deserve. That kind of self-possession is rare and unforgettable. Fourth, master secure communication. You can express needs without pressure. You can ask a question without accusation. You can share how you feel without expecting him to fix it. For example, I value open communication, and when things shift, it helps me to understand where we stand. Direct, graceful, unapologetically clear, and lastly, detach from the outcome. Not because you don't care, but because your self-worth isn't tied to his response. Your peace is not negotiable. When you stop needing him to choose you and instead focus on choosing yourself, you start to radiate a kind of confidence that draws emotionally available men toward you and filters out the rest. Remember this. The tests are not about perfection. They're about presence. They're about whether you can stay in your power when things get uncomfortable. Most women react, the rare ones respond. And those are the women men remember long after the test is over. Because at the end of the day, these aren't just his tests. They're also yours. Will you abandon yourself to be chosen? Or will you hold your standard and watch who rises to meet you? The answer to that changes everything. So, here's what happens when you pass the test. Not by playing games, but by showing up in your power, your truth, and your self-respect. Something begins to shift inside of him. Slowly at first, then all at once. When a man starts falling for you, it's not just because you're beautiful or fun or good to him. It's because he feels safe to be himself around you. He realizes he doesn't have to perform or impress. He can relax. And that feeling of emotional safety, that's what unlocks his heart. He's watched how you responded when he pulled away. He saw that you didn't chase. You stayed centered. He tested your boundaries, and instead of folding, you held firm with grace. He noticed how you communicated clearly without blame or drama, and all of that told him this woman is different. At this point, the fear he once had starts turning into clarity. He doesn't just like you, he respects you. And that respect deepens his emotional connection to you. He starts initiating more. He becomes consistent. He checks in, not because you asked him to, but because he genuinely wants to, because now he's invested. You'll feel it in the way he talks to you. His tone softens, his guard drops. You'll see it in his eyes when he looks at you, not with lust, but with admiration. He starts to open up about his past, his fears, his future, and not to test you, but to include you. Falling in love for a man isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, but you'll know it's real when he begins to prioritize your emotional well-being as much as his own. He starts planning, he listens more deeply, he creates space for your voice because your presence is no longer just exciting, it's meaningful. And here's the most beautiful part. He didn't fall for a version of you that was trying to win him. He fell for the version of you who didn't bend, didn't chase, didn't shrink. He fell for the woman who chose herself and let him choose her from a place of alignment, not fear. This is when the dynamic shifts from testing to trusting, from questioning to committing, from performance to partnership. But here's the key. You don't force this moment. You don't rush it. You allow it to unfold naturally with patience, poise, and self-worth. Because when you trust your value, when you believe in your magnetism without needing constant proof, you stop settling for temporary attention and start attracting lasting love. So if he's showing up differently, if his energy is focused, if he's present, if he's consistent, pay attention. He's not just talking, he's investing. And that's when you know the tests are over. The connection is real and it's your turn to decide if he's worthy of the love you're ready to give. If you've made it to this point, you now understand something most people never talk about. Before a man truly falls in love, he will test you, not always consciously, but instinctively. He's searching for something deeper than just chemistry. He's watching how you carry yourself, how you handle pressure, how you respond when things don't go your way. And now, you know you don't need to pass these tests by being perfect. You pass them by being real, by honoring your own boundaries, by staying emotionally grounded, by communicating clearly and refusing to shrink to be more likable. So, what's next? The next step is simple but powerful. Start Start observing your own patterns. Where do you tend to overgive? When do you start chasing? Where do you silence your voice in fear of losing someone? These are your clues. These moments reveal where your power still needs reclaiming. The more you practice self-awareness and emotional discipline, the easier it becomes to navigate his tests. Not from a place of defense, but from a place of deep self-trust. You won't have to guess what to say or do. You'll just know, because you'll be rooted in your truth. And here's the thing. The man who's right for you, he's not going to need you to pass every test flawlessly. He just needs to feel your authenticity. He's looking for a woman who's emotionally intelligent, grounded, and self-respecting, because that's the kind of woman a real man wants to build with. So, don't focus on being chosen, focus on being aligned. Show up as the version of you that already knows she's worthy. That energy changes everything. If this message hit home for you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with another woman who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you noticed any of these tests before? And how did you respond? Remember, your power lies not in controlling a man's actions, but in controlling how you show up for yourself. This is your heart. Protect it, own it, and only give it to someone who's ready to rise and meet